Nice. Hello, I'm Derek Wheatley. I frightened myself. Hello, I'm Derek Wheatley, and welcome to episode 119 of the Wheatley podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. I want to say a big thank you to Jacinta Daly for coming on last week. We talked about her time in a mother and baby home, her recovery from there, bringing her daughter home, and the shame the shame that people thought she should feel rather than what she felt. And then she became an addiction counselor stuff. She talked about that as well, which is something I wanted to cover on the podcast anyway. So thank you very much, Jacinta. Thanks to everyone for the support on social media, all that stuff. I'm excited about today's one because this is the first time I've actually been able to have someone on screen in the room, because before, when we were having guests, it was just audio. So and I got to play my little guitar there as well, which is always exciting. But my guest today is three-time guest before. I'm going to introduce him. He's just off to my right there, looking very pensive. And his name is Josh Chanin. How are you doing, Josh? Come on in. Oh, look at that for an entrance.
Enthusiasm.
He's wearing what are you wearing? Oh, it's a robe. Yeah, I've seen that actually. An Ali t-shirt. That's pretty cool though. It's nice. Thanks for coming in.
All right.
You feeling good?
Yeah, I just finished jiu-jitsu, so I'm always feeling good.
Yeah, we just came back there, literally came straight from jiu-jitsu, and wanted to get this done in the room. I've been setting this up. I hope it's all right. The sound is going to be slightly different than people are used to, simply for the fact we've had to use a different setting, obviously, to get the the round effect, and I don't know what it's called. But that's why 360. There we go. Very good. So this episode is going to be called Agree to Disagree. It's something that myself and Josh kind of do quite a bit, and we'll run through a few of the things, but it's more about like the importance of being able to do it and not holding grudges and not carrying this kind of annoyance home with you after we have a on sometimes mild things, sometimes more important things, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll start off with kind of saying that we would be considered, and unfortunately putting labels on ourselves is, something, well, people do it for us anyway.
Yeah.
They've done it to me often. But if you were calling, say, you'd be more to the right and I'd be more to the left.
Yeah.
And that kind of involves, if people don't know, we will be running through a lot of different kind of ways that people see someone on the right and someone on the left. And I don't know if there's like a huge gap between us.
I don't think it's huge.
No, but there's a small one that we talk about, and when people talk about right and left, there's a lot of well, America seems to be where it's at. So we've discussed this as well. When you're talking about gap, I don't think there's like a slight difference between the left and the right.
Not in America.
No. But what do you think of because we'd say it to each other messing, but what do you think of the labels? Like, I have some written down, like redneck, liberal, they call libtard, which is pretty horrible, but libtard is one, yeah. It's very hard. Snowflake, the alt-right, which is another thing. Which of those do you prefer to call me?
Libtard's quite fun.
It's brutal though.
I think I suppose it's a strange one, because I don't think they're certainly not related to debating, and they're certainly not related to cohesion, and they're certainly not related to actually figuring things out.
Yeah.
I think they're a way that they're an ad hominem argument where you don't actually have to argue the point and who's more accurate or what reality is. You just get to, if I don't agree with your opinion, I just go, oh, well, you're just a...
Yeah.
I'm not arguing the point. I'm not trying to figure out, maybe he's right, maybe I'm wrong, heaven forbid. It's just kind of the media, isn't it? Where it's sort of, well, you're either us or you're them, and that's it. And I think those phrases are that. There's no nuance to those phrases.
No, there's not. And I'm not going to be having to go to America all the time but it's
easy though, isn't it?
It is. And it's quite fun, but it's
over there.
Yeah, but it's such a, everything's bigger in America, like they always say. But even that kind of language, because in Britain or in Ireland, there is the right and left, but it's such a narrow. It's mild.
Yeah,
it's not like it doesn't get into. For the most part, doesn't get into insulting language and insulting names. But like you said, or do you think that's because of the fact that in Britain and Ireland we can talk about it more than they do in America?
I think, well, there is something I've recently sort of come across, is the idea that way back when both parties would live near each other. So your kids might be going to the same school.
Yeah.
So you'd meet each other on a personal level. So you were friends with the other side. And I don't know whether that's more the case in London, where they're involved in more like the similar sort of circles, where they're more on a personal level, like kind of you and I, on a personal level, we get on, we've got similar values sort of thing, but our political views might be slightly different. So we are able to separate the two.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that's part of the problem, is the more it's us versus them, the more you can dehumanize the other side, and they're stupid and they're this and they're that. And it just kind of, you move away from any rational argument and it just becomes this emotional war.
Yeah, and like even when you talk about, we'll use Britain just for example, because it's bigger, I suppose, but the idea of like talking about say the alt-right, I know it's an American like term, but in Britain you'd have to be on the extreme of society to be labeled someone who's in the alt-right, or even someone who's like considered a libtard or snowflake, whatever it might be. But in America, like you said, it's just, if you have an opinion on, it doesn't have to be,
or the Constitution or the free speech. Oh, you're all right.
Yeah, it's like you're immediately, and like I've fallen into that trap as well. Not saying it to people, but say, like if I'm watching something on YouTube, or if I've seen something on television, whatever it might be, I fall into a trap of going like, "Oh, that person's a redneck."
Yeah.
No, and you kind of,
it's so easy.
It's easy, but do you ever kind of get like, do you ever enjoy doing that? Because sometimes I do.
That's why we do it. That's
I know,
why we watch the news, because the news now isn't the news. It's look what these have done.
Yeah.
Again, you're right. You're on the right side. Look what these plebs have done.
Yeah.
Wrong. So and that's why it's so addicted to watch the news. I think because of that very feeling of, oh yeah, I am right, aren't I?
Yeah.
Because no one wants to be wrong.
No, and like speaking of that kind of watching the news, and we'll take it to it. The news is like one thing, but I think a lot of people get whether they're facts or not, but their information, from podcasters or media types, rather than like,
or independent journalists,
that kind of thing. Like, is there anyone in that particular kind of sphere, I suppose, that you do like to listen to, or you do respect their opinion,
like politically?
It doesn't even have to be politically, but someone who is like a podcaster, or someone who might be talking about stuff or they give other people a platform to talk about stuff.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, I can see you're edging me towards
Rogan. Here we go.
I can see where you're edging me.
Might have to mute the mic for a second. No.
I don't listen for the political stuff because I know if I'm listening to the thing I agree with, I'm just putting myself in an echo chamber. And if I'm listening to the other side and it's not argued, like it's not balanced, so it's just, oh, well, this is right. And it's like, well, hang on, what about this? I don't enjoy listening to that. I kind of prefer either something I don't know anything about, or something about self-improvement or kind of understanding the world, or philosophy or something like that, as opposed to political views. I like economics is probably the closest I'd get to real raw political stuff. But yeah, it's hard to pick figures because they're so divisive now. But I listen to Rogan not for Rogan. That's basically I like the guests, and I don't know any other podcasts, and I've no time to research them. So it's not him as such. It's just he has that platform, so he has the guests I want to, and I like the neuroscientists, and I don't really listen to the comedians that much. So I don't. Maybe Jocko, I suppose. And sort of the Navy SEAL sort of special forces guys, they're probably going to be more right-leaning. but they certainly don't bang on about it, and they don't really touch on politics. They touch on the philosophy of sort of personal responsibility and that sort of thing. So it's yeah, I mean, I've obviously heard of Louder with Chowder and like Ben Shapiro and these lads.
Yeah.
I don't listen to them. I mean, I don't really have I know they're unpopular.
Yeah.
So I don't, but
I mean, they're very popular. Yeah.
So I don't really have an opinion on it. So I can't speak on them as such. I mean, I've seen that one where Shapiro's with Piers Morgan.
Yeah.
I mean, I take or leave either of them.
Yeah.
Really, but so I don't really have but I've seen them have the gun debate. And obviously Shapiro is fantastic at debating.
Yeah, that's his thing, yeah.
That doesn't mean he's right.
No, of course.
You know, so it's just kind of just because you're really good at debating, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're accurate. It's right and wrong isn't really right.
No, but people will get swept up in it. Sometimes doesn't even have to be what somebody says. It could be how they're presenting it. And he is a debater. That's what his some would say he's a master debater. No, but such childish.
Why not?
First immature. But what? Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying, and I did see the bit with Piers Morgan as well, and I could take it or leave either and too. But he does know when he's researched the topic. He's a very good speaker on the topic, and like people will say, "Oh well, I like him. He sounds like he knows what he's talking about." And that's my that's my opinion. And the thing about Joe Rogan, because we've talked about it before, but it's not even the guy. I don't know Joe Rogan or anything like that, but I suppose my problem with Joe Rogan is sometimes he will say something, or he'll have someone on that'll say something, and there'll be a backlash, and he'll be like, "What?
Oh yeah, okay." Yeah.
It's just
so
like
he hasn't really appreciated his influence.
Oh, for sure,
and
it's like his influence in. Not just podcasting. Podcasting was one thing. He was one of the early starters in podcasts, but how he's become more, it's not even about his podcast anymore. It's about him and the guests and all that. And it's a huge platform he has. And obviously the best guests go on it. Like, I would be annoyed by, obviously because of my own leanings, would be annoyed by people by like Chowder, Louder with, what's his name? Crowder? Yeah, Crowder.
I don't know his name.
I think it's Stephen Crowder.
But yeah, is it Louder with Crowder? Crowder it must be, not Chowder. Obviously.
Louder with Chowder. Just eating chowder. It's really noisy.
Restaurant reviews.
But he's a real, there's something that rubs me up the wrong way, regardless of his politics. There's something.
It's just approach, isn't it? It's antagonistic and it's shock sort of stuff.
It's the shock. Yeah, that's it. And Shapiro's not like that. He's just a he's a different way of putting things across. But there's something quite I don't know, there's a smugness or something that is hard, you know, and he knows his stuff.
There's a raised eyebrow.
Yeah, I know, but and the annoying thing is that he knows his stuff. So you might not agree with him, but he's researched the thing.
Well, there's that's the interesting thing about debating is really when you boil down debates, it is often right versus left. It's either the left sort of approach of group or the right sort of approach of individual, and the right has an easier time, because they are arguing to keep things as they are, which is easier because there's no risk in that. We know that. Whereas the left, it's a much harder debate. Though they're an uphill battle because they want change, and change is risky. So we're innately drawn to keep things the way they are, because if you change too much, we freak out a little bit. And that's why he's able to debate, and why the best debaters are on the right, because it's an easier argument.
I didn't think of it that way, actually, and you're right, because there is obviously the liberals trying to change things, whether they're small things or they're massive things. And I suppose it's just when you see we won't go too into this because this is going to be very dodgy even to bring it up, but the Roe Wade controversy,
I don't know about this. Well, I've seen it, but I haven't really properly looked at it. You know, the leak, it was a leak. I don't understand what's happened.
Well, there was a leak of the Supreme Court justices, I can never say that word, have looking like they're going to vote to overturn the Roe Wade argument, so abortion is going to be illegal again. Now, again, it's the way America,
in the whole country.
States. Well, that's what the idea is, but the states do have a say in it as well. So it's complicated. But I just wanted to, when that happens, it can understand totally, whatever side you're on, how it just explodes, whether it's on social media, on the news, or whatever like that. And, that is something that's being changed by the right, by Trump's appointment of the last,
Supreme Court,
And it's such a huge thing. And that's when you really see, I suppose, when you really see the hate and the vile stuff that goes on online. And it really...
Well, that's the war side of it.
Yeah, that is,
that's
yeah.
Them versus us. It's like you dehumanize the other side now. And that's those phrases like snowflake, that you're starting to dehumanize them.
And it's such like...
Because ultimately, at the end of this, a lot of the time, it's a woman who needs help, really.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you, a lot of them will turn away from that and just think, no, it's about this. It's about the baby. You've got to save the baby. Well, you know, obviously there's a legit argument on both sides. But it's hard to forget.
Dangerous territory.
But I know. I just think it's
joking.
No, but I mean, I personally, if we're talking about that topic, it's not the government's decision. I don't think it's a governmental decision.
I agree.
The government is a blunt tool, and this is a moral decision, which should be made between the patient and the doctor, and that's it.
Yeah.
No one else should be involved in that, I don't think, other than the parties actually wholly affected by it. But obviously, it's a difficult debate because other people have different opinions on it, and there's no right or wrong.
No,
there's just two sides of it.
And such is the way
I fall on the side of she is in trouble.
Well,
no, she's in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not the government's place.
No, and
so even if I didn't agree with it, that it's still not my place.
And this is like a Supreme Court where there's 12, I think. I can't really, it's not a large number anymore. So say there's 12 people who are deciding on it. As you can get smaller. Is
there a disbalance or unbalance towards conservative in there?
There wasn't. It switches every time. Almost. Not every time, but you know the way, like if one passes away, then there's a Democrat in and a Democrat in, and they have to be nominated and all that, and there was big things. So I don't get too bogged down, but it's that idea that then you see the real hate and stuff. There's something. Can you show me that?
Is this the next topic?
Yeah, this is a topic that I wanted to bring up. Now this guy, right? See this hat now, right? Everything actually, it looks grand. But Josh said to me one day, I have a baseball cap that you're going to love. Okay.
Oh, well, I'd just like to point out, I didn't know about the thing.
Oh, did you know?
I just knew you hated. Whenever I wore a baseball cap, he hated it. So I got one with different colors, and this guy smiling. So that I didn't know when you told me about it. I didn't know. So that was a bonus for me.
It was a big bonus.
It wound you up.
My argument is, and people look at, and this is another thing, that like people watching this or listening to this will look at the cap and see completely different things.
Yeah.
And it won't make a difference. But for me, and this has been, Josh just told me this part of it, but to me, that's a racist baseball cap. No, that's a racist insignia on the baseball cap, because it's a Native American with red skin. Now you told me that that's not the team anymore.
No, so they're the Cleveland Guardians now,
right? And
the logo is a G with wings on it.
And what were they called when they were that?
The Cleveland Indians.
See, I can see the problem. But do you not see that as a bit dodgy? Like,
I well, obviously it can be interpreted as dodgy.
Do you not interpret
that's what's happened? But I don't know. I don't interpret it like that. And for me, just because I'm contrary, I'll wear it more now that I'm not allowed to wear it.
And fair play.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because if I had something that was pissing you off, I'd be happy to put it on and wear it. Do you know what I mean?
I only mainly wear it around you.
Well. And like I'm consistent, by the way, regardless of what's on the baseball cap. I will tell people in the gym that I don't really know that well to take the baseball cap off because they're ludicrous. And this is like, I'm consistent with that. So that's one thing. And I know Josh knows that she's pissed me off with the baseball cap. But this thing, and this has happened to a couple of teams, a couple of franchises, I should call it.
Yeah.
They've had to change it. But interestingly enough, the Washington Redskins are still that.
Yeah, I mean, is it the red thing? Is it the red thing, and is it the red skin that is the thing with this?
Well, they've still got the Native American on their vests or whatever.
Well, they will not anymore. They're allowed to sell it, so they sell.
But this is just them though. This isn't Washington.
Oh, sorry. Well, all right. Sorry.
The Redskins still have
that logo. What is the logo?
It's a Native American.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it's interesting, like, and I'm wondering, is it people like we don't know, but is it because of the size of the franchise? Because obviously the Washington Redskins are massive.
Yeah. And is that football? NFL?
Yeah, that's NFL.
Oh yeah. So NFL's so much more popular. Oh well,
But
There's more money in it.
Okay, but here's an example. What's interesting is the Washington Bullets became the Wizards because the connotations of obviously the violence of the bullet. So
I think that's ridiculous.
But yeah, we probably do. But if you're living in Washington where it's probably bullet heavy.
I mean, I suppose like when you get onto the nuances of the argument, like exactly why is that symbol considered racist? I want to pull back and go to a more fundamental idea of why, if a symbol can be interpreted multiple ways, why does that maybe cynical view or whatever it might be, why is that the overpowering? Because you're assuming the connotation, like you're assuming what they meant by wearing it or whatever intention you're assuming the intentions of whoever's wearing it. Oh, it must be racist, but it wasn't supposed to be that. And the people who wore it or wear it now, it was just, I mean, I liked it because it was just a smiley logo. Like I've liked it since a kid, so that's why I wore it. So it's, for me, it's something positive, but that's my interpretation of it.
I get that, yeah.
And someone else is obviously allowed to interpret it, but that's how they're interpreting it. But the way I would look at it is, I don't need to change it. They decided to interpret it like that. That wasn't my intention of it.
But the views on how we look at things have definitely changed in everything. If people are offended by something, I'll use the Redskins because the Redskins are still there. Like they're still called that. If they were called the Washington Blackskins, would they still be called that? And I don't think they would.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's obviously different. Like obviously, look at something like the Nazi symbol. I mean, we're not going to debate whether that's, because it's just so far.
Jesus.
No, but I mean, it's so far. You know what I mean? It's a completely different ballpark that we're playing with.
Yeah.
But then I'm on my side, I would say something like the hammer and sickle should be held in the same regard as the Nazi symbol.
It's a strong symbol, though. I've made this point before, isn't it? Though, like it's a very powerful.
But the symbols are powerful, and that's obviously why we're debating symbols, because they're so powerful. But
here's an interesting question: why am I less offended by? Well, actually, not so much less offended, because obviously with the Nazis are the Nazis, but the hammer and sickle is kind of like, it's not that I think it's great and I get like a T-shirt with it on it or anything like that, but it just, I look at it differently. I look at it as a very strong idea of something very strong, but I know that behind that, there's a lot of badness to it.
Well, there's two things I think with it. Is one, it's left leaning, so it's kind of the idea is that it was supposed to be more compassionate. Like it's a more compassionate group approach to the world, and that's the hammer and sickle. But also with the swastika, we've been like grandfathered into that. Like everyone in the West agrees 100% no. So it kind of, well, you know, there's obviously weird groups on the edges, but I think they're more doing that to antagonize people as opposed to genuinely thinking, you know, or admiring what the Nazis did. But because everyone in our culture has agreed on that, there's no room for our own interpretation. Whereas with the hammer and sickle, it hasn't happened, because we don't talk about Stalin and the gulags and that sort of thing. That isn't talked about the way the Holocaust is talked about. For some reason, it's just not the focus of like, look, this is what happens when this side goes too far. This is what happens when this side goes too far. We need things in place on both sides to stop us going that far. And I think that's possibly why the hammer and sickle doesn't have the same. So, because there's room for interpretation with the Nazi symbol, no room for interpretation.
Do you see any? I wanted to ask you this because obviously you've lived in both places. Do you see a big difference between the Irish and the English?
In what sense?
I guess just in, you know, not so much lifestyle, but just in how they live, their ideas on things.
I mean, obviously you can't help but see there's an anti-English undertone, which, you know, fair
That's
enough.
My next question.
Fair enough. Which, I mean, obviously I feel that personally, but, you know, if I don't like it, I can leave. But it is, obviously you notice it is there, and it is part of the Irish identity to a degree. But I think probably one of the other most striking things is the lack of social class. There's no kind of, there's obviously in the UK or England, there is a distinct sort of, we're a bit obsessed with class and the different strata of it. Whereas in Ireland, it isn't really, you know, millionaires dressed the same as everybody else sort of thing. There's no kind of, I suppose there's more of a humility, I suppose, in general. So yeah, that's been interesting to see the difference, and just more relaxed to things, which I think is just a healthier approach to life. Whereas the Brits are a bit like the Germans in a sense, where these are the rules,
right,
and that's it. Why? Just because it's written down. That's why we have to do it. Whereas here, it's a bit like, yeah, it's written down. Yeah. You know, like, yeah, we all have to wear a mask. Yeah.
It's
illegal. It's illegal. Of course, you got to wear a mask.
Yeah.
But then no one's wearing a mask. So I prefer that approach where you're allowed the nuance of kind of, look, we're all grown-ups. Don't take the mick. You know, these are rules. You know what the rules are. If you take the mick, then we'll step in. Whereas I feel there's more that approach in Ireland when it comes to like regulation and rules and stuff. It's a bit more like, come on. Whereas in the UK, you're not really, there's not that sort of, I suppose, level of freedom really of just kind of, you know, I mean, I feel it more in pharmacy. That's probably part of it. Because in the UK, it's heavily regulated.
Right.
Whereas in Ireland, it is moving that way, but it's much more, well, you're educated, you've got an opinion on it, and you'll do the best for the patient. That's the assumption, is you're trying to do the best for the patient, and that's that. Whereas in the UK, it's like, oh, are you doing the best for the patient? It's almost like the assumption is you're not doing the best for the patient, and the public need to be protected from these scandalous, horrendous pharmacists. But yeah, whereas in Ireland, it's a little bit more sort of like, well, actually, they're educated, they've learned this stuff, they have opinions on it, and they will do what's best for the patient, given the nuances of a particular situation, because the regulation doesn't cover all the nuances. And the regulations are often in an ideal world where people don't lie and they don't pretend they haven't done this and the medicines go missing and all this sort of stuff. They just magically threw them in the fire or whatever. That happens a lot. But
fair enough.
Whereas in that, it just, I don't know, it just kind of, you're allowed to that sort of situation to situation, you're allowed that sort of autonomy, which I think is an important part of the profession, really. So that's probably why I focus more on regulation than most people would.
That's fair enough. But like, there's speaking of education, this might get me in trouble, actually. So
this is making me hard.
Is it, you can take that off now. We've discussed it. We've decided it is racist. No. So I called it, like, to call an English person a tan is probably one of the worst things you could really call them in our eyes, in the Irish person's eyes, because of
I felt the room go icy a couple of times when I've used the word tan. Everyone's gone, oh, and they didn't know how to take
it. A bit much. But it was one day we were slagging each other or whatever, and I used the word tan, and Josh didn't know what it meant. I don't think he didn't know.
No idea.
And you went away and obviously looked it up and stuff, and we've had a bit of crack and stuff like that since. But I kind of feel I enjoy calling you, like, but it's not in a real nasty way. But it's if you've read up about the tans and the black and tans,
I remember John saying it's such a tan thing when I said, what is that? And he went, such a tan thing. Just because I didn't know what it was.
But isn't it funny though? Like, and I don't know why I thought you would know it or you should know it. But when I just said it, I just presumed that you'd be like, gee, that's a bit strong, because you think it, but it's like, and I think we talked about this on a podcast. I'm not sure, maybe we didn't, but just the idea of you not finding out that, because it was Churchill and Cara Delevingne's great grandfather maybe were two of the guys that set them up, and it's a brutal insult to call you, but I'm kind of glad I do as well, like, because you don't take it as an insult, like it's not a and I don't mean it as such, and people,
there's no malice.
And people friends call each other all sorts of stuff. But I guess there's more weight to that historically, but I'm not using it in the sense of the weight, I use using it in a kind of a jokey way, I suppose. Yeah. But you weren't offended by it?
No, I mean, the English education just doesn't really touch on a lot of the bad stuff that we did.
Oh, that's typical.
So, classic time thing. So I don't really see it as it is what it is. I mean, people can't, it's where it comes down to past things that generations have done. I mean, we can try and move towards this idea of cosmic justice where we can make everything right with the world. But my opinion falls on the fact that we're not gods and we don't have that much sweat. We can influence things, but really it's very hard to fight that urge of, well, your ancestors did this to my ancestors. Whereas, I mean, it's a weak argument because it's not emotive.
Yeah.
But I said to you, I've not done anything to you.
No.
But it's very hard to remove ourselves from that kind of what you've been raised with, of like, well, this is my nation and this is what I'm proud of. And it's a bit, you were inherited with that, and that's emotive. Whereas the rational side of, I've literally not done anything to you personally, and we can actually get on despite our country's history. That's quite hard to do.
But I was never, that's the thing about like my upbringing, neither of my parents ever mentioned anything about the English. Like they never said or my grandparents for that matter. There was never any anti-English stuff. And I've heard it obviously from other people's parents and, you know, people still carrying it on like, Jesus, lads.
We've heard it at the gym, haven't we, a couple of times?
We have heard it at the gym. And it's funny, like, the complete lack of awareness of who's around you as well, because we obviously have some English people in the gym. You have yourself, you have Keen, obviously, and Jake he's still there, but it's really weird. We heard one guy, we won't have to name names or whatever. I'd love to. I know, but like he's an Irish guy teaching it to a Brazilian guy, which is like that's going beyond what we've established it's about. Like it's like why you dragging trying to drag someone else
like a convert.
It's such a weird thing. It's like, oh yeah, we get the Brazilians into hate the English as well. They probably do already. I know. But no, listen,
we've not made that sound popular. But
no, but listen, it's okay. I'm going to read out the advert and we'll get back to it. So here we go. I'm going to move that because I have a louder voice than you. So Fusion Training Centre, Monksland Athlone, a place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us at Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre, train like a warrior. Smooth.
I want smooth.
Thanks very much. Like this is where I try and write very well when I'm doing the episode. Like, you know, I don't know what that word is at all. Okay, so do you think that there's a skill, a kind of an unearned skill or an unpracticed skill of how we allow our arguments and disagreements to peter out? Because they do tend to just...
I don't think it's unearned.
Right.
Certainly don't think it's unearned. I think, I mean, you've obviously been through a lot, and I've learned, well, we've discussed this before, I've learned through psychology and like how the human nature through history and actually see, well, you learn what humans are actually like, not what we say we're like. And because of that understanding, we're able to separate ourselves a little bit in our own heads because we've become conscious of our thoughts, because we've had to get a bit more control of them and sort of, and there's also a maturity level over time. Everyone ends up doing that and they realize, oh, that suggestion, let's call it the chimp, that suggestion from the chimp isn't necessarily, I'm not going to do that. So we know these arguments are emotive and we know we can detach ourselves from the emotion and sort of remember, oh, actually, it doesn't really matter because neither of us are. I mean, I'm under no illusion that I'm more likely to be right than you and vice versa. Because I mean, what are the chances of that?
I know.
I mean, we're so limited.
Yeah.
I mean, it's laughable to think, well, no, I'm right and you're right. It's like, no, that isn't even the right metric when it comes to politics, because it depends on the time and the context. Because sometimes you need slightly more right leaning and sometimes you need more left leaning. I mean, I don't think you can really debate that. No. I mean, it's obvious that it depends on the time and the context. So that helps, I think. But I don't think it's unearned. I think we've earned it, but we haven't directly earned it. It's kind of like your cardio in jiu-jitsu. You didn't run and cycle to get good cardio in jiu-jitsu, but it's there. So it's not unearned. It's just a happy happenstance, I think.
But I'd never had it with anyone else though, like where we could be having a disagreement on something, and like it might be something serious, or it might be something, you know, doesn't mean anything. But sometimes we will be talking, and it's almost like we switch it off like a tap, and I'd be like, oh, look at that, you're out there, like we looking out the window in the car or something.
Yeah.
But it's just gone. But I feel that sometimes, like subconsciously, we will do that like I will mention something or you will say something to like
Move on.
kind of
Move
redirect
on.
it over here, because it's really either we're not going to get to the root of this, because how would we?
Yeah, exactly.
Or,
and I think
that could be the main thing.
They're the techniques, I suppose, we've learned subconsciously where, it doesn't actually matter. And our brains remember, well, we're getting emotional and, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it's a great...
like the fact that we're getting emotional means it doesn't matter, because there's no debate then.
But what I still get emotional with people when I'm arguing sometimes. Not that often that I argue.
It depends how they deliver it. I think we both have enough humility and we're not married. Like, I'm not married to my views. It's kind of like I'm trying to look for what fits for me and what works for me. And I've seen work and all that sort of stuff, but I'm not married to it. If I was married to it, there's an arrogance to it, where then you are like, oh no, I'm right and you're wrong. And that's, I think that humility that we've developed, because we're both a bit older, I think because of that, it's also, we're able to detach ourselves because there's a humility in this. So it's a tricky one to try and figure out how we do it. But they're the techniques that we would use. Because we just, well, I suppose it's almost like sparring. Because I mean, the thing is, it's not like you tap or I tap and we carry on. It's just like, cool, reset. It's just, it's similar to that. It's more of an intellectual sparring. And I suppose it's like that, really. We're trying to, and I like to know what the other side is thinking. I want to know, because there's a time when that is the right approach. And there's a time when my approach is right. So it's kind of,
the flexibility, there has to be some sort of flexibility within it. But like, do you think we have like different, because it's something that we've kind of brushed on before, never really kind of got into a full conversation. Do you think we have different ideas of like the dynamics of a family?
Possibly, but we, as you say, we've not really talked about it that much. But I think our values are similar enough, and the things that matter and how we deal with one another, they're similar enough where that seems to be what's more important. How do we actually conduct ourselves around people? How do we deal with other people? Whereas our political views, they're almost like guesses, aren't they? It's like, well, I think this would probably work better most of the time. But even that's not like this is always the way. It's a bit like, most of the time, I think this is probably the better approach. But, you know, what are the chances that I'm right with that? So it's more of a faith thing. In terms of family dynamics, I mean, am I?
Would you be more of a traditionalist?
I think so. Yeah, that's how, because that's what's worked. It's not like I looked, what's a traditional family, read it and gone, well, I'll implement that. It's more, well, this is what works. And then after the fact, it's like, oh, that's what people would call a traditional family. So it's our approach, mine and Martha's approach, is to complement one another. So she is naturally more feminine and I'm naturally more masculine. So we complement. So her strengths and my weaknesses and vice versa. I mean, kind of a way we've been a bit more 21st century is she'll maintain the household, but I'll chip in as much as time allows me. And then as much as I'm out working and earning money, she'll chip in and do some shifts sort of thing. So we're trying to hit that balance where, you know, what we're sort of told is the way to run a relationship in the 21st century, with actually that doesn't really, like, that doesn't work for me. This is my strength and this is your strength. So let's complement one another, which for us has been a much more successful approach. Obviously it's not perfect,
but it's also, but it's also the idea that like you work on stuff, like, because that wasn't ever a thing. I mean, like, you work in your relationship. I don't know the family, two little ones as well, but like just the work on the relationship is a new thing. Whereas, you know, before, going back in the past, you see these people who were stuck in marriages of, you know, having to be there, not communicating at all by the end. And it's a really miserable idea that, especially like Ireland, Britain were ahead with divorce and things like that. And so Ireland was like, you couldn't divorce. There was no, there was a shame on separation.
That was quite something as well. Yeah. Like that, it was just some of the stuff that was I'd taken for granted in the UK. Yeah. And I was a bit like, oh, that's, wow. Okay. Like, you know, the 2 year thing, you've got to be, and all that sort of stuff. It was a bit like, oh, you can't just cut and run.
And like, that's what, like, I don't know if we kind of practice what we see, or, you know, my parents separated when I was quite young, you know, when I was 7 or 8. And what I saw after that was perfectly normal to me because I was a kid, like, you know.
Yeah.
And then every time, I don't think I've mentioned this before, but every time I saw, like, my grandparents were together, both my sets of grandparents were together, you know, all, you know, till the end, you know. But that generation wasn't a generation that like would be holding hands or next to each other on the couch and cuddling or whatever. It just wasn't done.
No.
So every time this is like, I was going to school and you'd go to your friend's house and you'd have like their parents would be real close and like maybe an arm around. And I said, this is weird. Like, what's going on here? Like,
I had a bit like that with my family aren't the most affectionate.
Right.
So when I went around to other families and they were affectionate and liked each other.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's a bit like, what are you doing?
It's very...
Why are you hugging them like that? It's not like a bro hug. It's like there's a lingering touch.
But I wanted to leave. I wanted to
get away from it because you couldn't compute it, or
I was so uncomfortable in the affection of two grown-ups.
Well, did you feel like you shouldn't be watching it or shouldn't be seeing it, or was it more?
No, it's not.
You couldn't face it.
I couldn't understand it. It wasn't like I didn't think there was anything weird. Oh, this is yucky. Like, you know what I mean? Okay. Until now, look, when I got to 16, 17, that's different. But just when I was quite young, and
you turn away from it.
Yeah. And my idea, I don't know if my idea since then has been like, and the circumstances, you know, whatever. But I don't think I'm going to get married. I never thought of an idea of getting married, or obviously I thought of kids at one point. I was like, that'd be nice. But I think I mentioned this to you. I think I said it on the podcast a few times about the idea of the mental health thing would be a problem. And I think that, you know, the child would inherit that. And I know that's not necessarily the case, but the idea of a marriage or that kind of thing was very unappealing to me. And I'm not saying that, like, obviously I'm not saying that's my parents' fault. Like, they weren't, you know, shouldn't have been together. That's the way it is. But
I think the majority of people probably get married for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I think
they're not able to see the red flags and they're not able to understand. And we're not taught. There's almost a push for men and women are the same, as opposed to actually they've both got their own strength, natural on the whole in general. They've got their own strengths and weaknesses.
Steady.
And a relationship should probably be more about complementing one another.
Yeah.
And trying to understand the feminine and the masculine, so you don't misinterpret. Because I think a lot of that, where they're not talking by the end of it, a lot of that is misinterpretation because of how the intergender dynamics, where if a man does this, it means this. And a woman, if they do the same thing, would probably mean something else. And there's that kind of, because we're not aware of that and we're not been taught that, and no, unless you really go and look for it, you wouldn't know that. So there's so much not said and there's so much misinterpretation that resentment is bound to build up because you've not tried to ask them why they did it. And the person you're asking, why did you do that? They probably don't know why they did that. Yeah. Because a lot of it's instinctive. So it's, I just wanted to do it, so I did it. And it's a bit like, well, you know, what do they actually mean when they do something or say something? Does it mean that? Like, we could even check, did you mean to come across like this when you did that? And I think that's kind of been my approach with the relationship, and sort of we've learned from, I suppose, the experts, and I've tried to study the experts and figure out their approach. And that is the kind of admitting that there is still a nature part of us, and we can rationalize all we want, that we wish men and women were exactly the same, but unfortunately they're not. And I don't think we're not gods, as I've said. We don't have the power to make that happen. We can force it, but I think there's consequences to that make people less happy. But, you know, that's enough.
Well, the gender thing is interesting as well, because you know, I've called myself a feminist, but I've been called a feminist in there, and everybody slags me and it's hilarious and all that. But I am, for sure. But again, it's what I saw. Like, when my parents separated, they both had to work, you know, because we moved to Dublin. My mom had to work up there. My dad was working down here. Like, and what I saw was, like, when we were down here, my dad was working, we had a minder until we were old enough, and then we were able to do what we kind of wanted within reason. And it was the same up in Dublin. So what I saw that my mom could do was the same as anybody else could do. And she was out working so hard and climbing ladders, which were definitely made more difficult because she was a woman, and she was in an industry where the management will say were predominantly men. So again, like, that's just another kind of what I saw growing up, like, with to do with marriage, to do with gender. And that's obviously shapes it. All shapes you, like, you know, it's obviously the point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to kind of point that out. And what's the story with like Air Jordans, and why do you like Air Jordans? This is going. I want to lighten the tone a bit.
Lighten it up a bit.
Yeah.
I think well, part of it is because I used to wear them as a kid.
But okay,
And
let me. I'm not gonna jump across for too much. But as kids, your two your son and daughter have Air Jordans, and they're very cute.
Yeah.
But on you,
they're ridiculous. Oh, they are. But
okay.
But it's kind of, I wore them as a kid, and then I sort of watched home videos that my dad had recorded at the time, and I thought, like, where did that confident little lad go?
Yeah.
Like, the way I just like storm off up the mountain, sort of like when we were away, and then I kind of wanted to get that a little bit. Like I'd lost that sort of just, you don't have to be 100% accurate. It doesn't have to be perfect in order to have that confidence. And I think at some point that I'd forgotten all that, and it got sort of lost probably during the teenage years. So there was a little touch of that, of kind of like, well, I used to wear that and liked it, so I'm going to do that a little bit. But then also, I liked, I mean, obviously Jordan has a lot of flaws without question, but there is an aspect of him that I admire. And sometimes I'd like to be more like that and sort of thing, you know, the sort of, you either, you know, you get on board, this is the standard, and it's that raw competitive sort of, and a lot of people don't like that. And it's another thing that's context based, because if he takes that approach to his marriage or his kids, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So I don't take that approach in other contexts, but sometimes when you need to dig in and need to be competitive and all that sort of stuff, that Jordan for me is the symbol of that. And I think that is for a lot of people. That Jumpman is the symbol of someone who's competitive. Their standards are high. They want to keep getting better. It's not good enough. And as I say, you have to taper that at times. But you know, that's a reason I like the Jordans. It's not the look. It's not the social thing, and it's not the look. It's the symbol. No. But it's the symbol of it, and it's kind of just, yeah. So I think. Yeah. I mean, that would be my guess.
Well, that's like, obviously that's your thing. It's just I find them quite, I don't know, I'd be very,
they're weird enough, and they're very chunky.
That's what I was going to say. I'd be self-conscious wearing them because of the size of them.
But you're big enough to wear them, bro.
Yeah, I know,
because there's kind of, I've got a balance because I'm kind of thick dude.
Yeah,
so I've kind of got a balance.
That's fair. No, that's fair. What big topics do you think we agree on? Do you think we agree on like any of the bigger
and when you say topics, what do you mean?
You see, yeah, I was thinking about this question. I was trying to think of the correct word, because you can say topics, you can say, but maybe like,
you mean politics,
ideals,
or do you mean
or morals, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, how you treat people.
Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the fundamentals we have, and also improving.
I think you're very patient with people.
Yeah. I'm very forgiving as well, because I just think it's so complicated to get it right, and we're so ignorant to so much of why we do what we do, because it's all hidden from us. I can't help but, I mean, I can't hold it against them. It's tough. It's hard getting things right.
Yeah, but it's hard to be patient sometimes.
It is. You know, I mean, but then I suppose I've spent years trying to learn the patience, really. And with the kids, you get more practice.
That's true.
Of patience, and just like detaching yourself from, because all patience is detaching from emotion. So the impatience is almost an emotion. So it's not necessary right now. Just getting angry and getting emotional about it, I'm going to change it. Yeah. Like, so I think that's probably where the patience comes from. But they're the two things I think we agree most on, is the self-improvement of learning and getting better, and how we treat people, because that says a lot about someone, because that's an action. So we can talk all we want, but I think actions are more important than words, and what you say that you believe and say should be done. Neither of us, as I say, the way we treat people is most important thing.
I mean, there's like, if you were to pick one thing that you'd like to, I'll start it because it's an unfair question, but like, if you were to pick one thing, one kind of characteristic that I have that you'd like, what would it be? I would say I'd like your competitiveness, in the sense of, I think there's different ways to be competitive. There's some toxic competitiveness, you know. Yeah,
which is far.
And it's, I was kind of, when I was maybe not even grown up, when I was like in my 20s, and I was seeing this idea of like, I need to be more competitive in certain areas, and I saw this kind of toxic competitiveness, and it just turned me off completely.
Yeah, I can understand that.
When I go just an example of like we just were at a jiu-jitsu competition at the weekend, and the kind of competitiveness in that is much more refreshing, in that everybody wants to win. Like people enter competitions to win it. That's why I don't enter competitions, because I don't have that kind of drive. But it's how you react to it as well. Like, and sometimes you see that in jiu-jitsu a lot, and we could bang on about jiu-jitsu all day, like, but you see how people react. They're disappointed, but it's not a horrible kind of throwing your toys out the pram kind of thing. You're very congratulatory to the person who's beating you in the match and stuff like that. But your competitiveness would be ideal for me if I had it, because you can see it, but it's very much, tempered a little bit.
It's used as a tool. It's not. I don't let it overtake me.
No, it's not there all the time.
No, it's just I use it as a tool if I need to.
Like, people will walk outside their door and they're immediately competitive with, that guy's got a better shirt though. That kind of idea. And there's people like that, and a waste of time in it. But that's what I mean. That the kind of practice, like, this is where I'm going to use it, and then I can leave it and get back to it when I do the same thing. I think that was nice, wasn't it?
It was. I like you gave me a compliment the other day on the podcast when you're talking about my problem solving.
Oh yeah.
That was quite cool. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
But just being able to problem solve that way and become a focus, because I do that. And I hadn't noticed that until you'd said it.
Thanks for listening to the podcast.
I don't comment on it, but I listen. What do I admire about you?
No, not admire, because that's fishing.
Oh, you mean like the value sort of thing?
Yeah, if there was one thing that you saw,
approach.
Maybe approach.
I like the way you approach jiu-jitsu, in that you're able to just switch off the caring. You're like, I suppose it's almost the opposite. Like, I'll try and not let it bother you, because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
But I know you need to let it bother you a bit to do something about it. Whereas your approach is like if something happens, you're just you're able to just not let it at all in, and that's cool. Like that's really cool. I like that approach, especially with jiu-jitsu. But you're just able to just switch off. Like you can. Just I'm going to care about that and that, and it's almost like it happens and you just throw it in the bin and just carry on.
It's fun. It is a funny thing, because, like you said, it's almost the opposite of what we, like I was saying about your competitiveness, and I see it in jiu-jitsu. I see it. I don't see it when you're with me, because there's more of it's not even respect, because you respect everyone in there, but it's just like because we're friends. Like, but I see it with other people, and I can see the competitive streak. But like, I know what you mean. Like my whole thing was jiu-jitsu. I know how important it is for my mental health, and and this is the thing. Like, I didn't practice this idea that, like, just my mental health. I don't care about if I lose this, and obviously I don't want to get tapped or whatever. Like, I want to do well in the rolls, but it's the whole thing to get to the end of it and think like, I got tapped twice. What am I going to do with that? Like, it doesn't matter. Like,
that's what I admire.
It's that idea. If you're going to a competition and you want to win all the roles before it, and you're getting trained, and I understand totally why that would mean something, then you'd be like, I made a mistake there. That was stupid. It would be more dumb for me if I wasn't competing at all, but yet was taking this thing home with me and being annoyed, and then maybe not turning up the next day because I'm annoyed about it.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Look,
that's how you're able to do it.
Yeah, I think so. It's it's one of those. But I was going to ask this question. It's probably out of date now. I don't even know if Elon Musk is taking over Twitter, but it's the idea.
Bought it, isn't he?
Has he bought it?
Yeah, he bought it. Yeah.
So it makes sense. But like, what are the dangers of someone whose ideas? Look, I don't forget about Elon Musk. So this could be anybody.
Yeah.
Who takes over a corporation that is already pretty horrible online. You know what I mean? Like, they have like bans for people, but the stuff people get away with saying. But he's wiping that out now. He's saying free speech is important on this site.
But I think the problem is free speech, when it was person to person, made sense.
Yeah.
Because people wouldn't say those things to each other. Whereas the internet has added a dynamic to the whole debate where, well, people don't have social consequences to being horrible to each other and just disgusting. And half the time they're being disgusting because they're just bored.
Yeah.
And so that's a brand new thing that we're trying to deal with. And that was that we don't know how to deal with it. And obviously the people who are running or had run Twitter, you know, Jack Dorsey and all that, they're not idiots.
Yeah.
It's not like they hadn't tried, but you're trying to walk that line, because the hard thing is it's balance, is trying to find the right balance. And that's, you'll always have people go, oh, well, it's too much this side, no, it's too much that side. But that's the whole point, because we're trying to get down the middle somewhere where we're letting people talk, but equally, like, there should be consequences to what you say. So maybe there could be a consequence system on the internet that would be different, because people, I think we do get a bit mixed up with freedom of speech in general in the real world, and then freedom of speech on something that isn't the real world. And obviously the big challenge is to stop it becoming a cesspool, because for some reason, when there's no social consequences, people who maybe are a bit down or feel down on themselves in the real world sphere, they can sort of get their revenge back online, and that's what you're seeing again, which is a new phenomenon. Because no, you know, Jack Dorsey never thought, he didn't start Twitter and go, oh, that's what will happen with this. It's just been a bit like the same with Zuckerberg and all of them. I think they've gone, oh wow, I didn't think this is going to happen. And these are just one individual. They didn't think it was going to happen. They don't know how to control it. They don't know what to do about it. And it's, you're kind of left with the limited mind trying to solve it. So, okay, Elon Musk is a genius, but that doesn't mean he's going to be able to solve it any better than Jack Dorsey was, because he'll still come against the same roadblocks. And okay, you can mechanically figure things out, but can you figure out an algorithm and the logistics of how to taper the cesspool, which, I mean, I don't use Twitter.
Oh, it's
and I think most people don't, because of the cesspool. Yeah. And I know the same thing happens on YouTube comments and all that sort of stuff. And the real challenge is who defines what hate speech is online, who defines what you're not allowed to say and who you're allowed to say it to. And that's where we start getting into really muddy waters, because this is brand new and we don't know how to deal with it, because the way we used to deal with it was social constraints. So like your man at the gym who was anti-English, well, neither of us really talked to him. Yeah,
fair enough. Yeah,
because that's social consequence where, you know, certain people are drawn to it, and other people aren't drawn to it. So that was a social consequence of saying hateful things or inciting hateful things, whereas that isn't the case online. So those things that our culture has evolved, those checks and balances aren't there online, and that's where it falls down, because it's like, well, what do we do about that? And that's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, and like, I want to point out, I don't think he's a genius, but it's, again, the difference of opinions.
I mean, I think from an empirical level, you can call him a genius. Whether you like his politics. Yeah, it's not even his politics. It's not his politics. It's like Steve Jobs. He went, I know, I've said this before, did I? He went, we'll put 20,000 things in your pocket, get to work. Yeah, he didn't do it. He just had an idea. Now, I had mad ideas. Well, he had a vision. He had a vision of how he wanted it to be.
Yeah, but why didn't he make it?
Beat people.
Yeah, exactly. But what, like,
till they wrote Shakespeare on the typewriter. Yeah, just kept hitting them
till he gets it. Yeah, basically.
But I think to be said for vision. That's
no, there is. Oh no, I'm not like. I do get that as well, but I kind of being facetious about it. But the idea of like Twitter as a whole, I am on Twitter, and the problem with Twitter for me is you can't avoid it, avoid the horrible stuff, because I only follow film critics that are like, musicians that are like, it'd be arty, but I only follow about 40 people.
Yeah.
But the retweets, and they always send you like, you might like this, and it's some horrible person. You know,
well, I mean that.
I know that's a business model as well.
Well, that's the emotive side of it. Yeah. Like, unfortunately, because we're evolved to focus on the negative, because the negative is more likely to kill you, and the good, you know, there was no upside. It's just how you feel good. All right, cool. But the negative will kill you. So it makes sense that we've evolved to focus on negative. So any negative thing is emotive, which draws us in, because for whatever reason, we want to feel things. So we move towards it, and we don't detach ourselves from it and try and stay rational. So that's why there's the negative hate. And it's like, well, look at this. And why the algorithm goes, you'll like this.
Yeah.
Have a look at this. What do you think about it? Because they're just throwing spaghetti at the wall, isn't it? Trying to figure out what sticks. But it's very hard to train yourself to move away from that nature of looking at the negative. Oh, man, have you seen this? That's why the news is always negative, and we all know that. But it's trying to resist that urge, because it's an and the idea is people who don't buy into it, or they don't feel that temptation, but it's not true. They don't give in to the temptation, because of course you want to look, but you just know it's not good for you to look, because it gives you a warped view of the world. And that's what Twitter is.
Twitter is, and it's the worry is the people who are less equipped to deal with that kind of stuff, and kind of abuse, because some people might see abuse and walk away and not give a damn.
You see
about,
it with celebrities, when they're not able to handle it, and there definitely needs to be.
And imagine kids though,
away from,
teenagers. We always, and you have 2 kids, and people are worried about that now, because for one thing, it's tough enough with school in general and the stuff they have to go through there. But then they have something like Twitter, who just allow you to say anything you want.
The problem is it's that temptation to look. And that's why you can't just say to the teenager, stop looking, because it isn't like that. Because the same as the adult, we have that temptation to watch the news and find out all the bad stuff and the gossip that's happening. If you haven't taught them or shown them how to resist that temptation, and where that temptation comes from and why they want to look, because that's why they want to look. If you don't teach them how to deal with that, they'll keep looking. And then the damage is done. So but I'm not saying that's easy. But that would be a place to start, is to learn that you want to look. So the people who are getting bullied, they want to look. And then that's a good starting place, because that's weird. Why would you want to look?
Why would you?
But then it's because it's the approach, the negative emotive aspect. So it's
it's just, look, it's, I don't know,
it's rough. I'm not looking forward to that. I know, kids.
When we first met in the gym, obviously, I think you started just before me, maybe, and
around about the same.
It was roughly around the same time we started jiu-jitsu. Like, how do you think we became friends? Because
I remember the moment. I remember the moment. I was speaking about the Oliver Stone documentary, and you were talking about it. And I remember I was in the front, and you started talking. I was like, you watch this stuff too? You're into learning and stuff. Like you want to get different views on stuff. So I just remember, this is grand. Like that's why I started jiu-jitsu more than anything, because I've always been interested in martial arts. But the main thing of joining jiu-jitsu was to develop a base of friends, because I obviously come here at an older stage. I wasn't going through uni again, so you're not going to make friends there, and all the places that you normally make friends. And I'm not in one place at work. So of course, I'm moving around. So again, you don't really make friends as much there. You obviously make some friends, but it's not, you don't get a chance to build that foundation. Whereas I just thought jiu-jitsu is a way to, and it's something I didn't have in England. So I could start jiu-jitsu and make some friends there and that sort of thing. So that was almost my intention, more than the other intentions. It's changed a bit now, but because now it's more for like, I want to teach the kids how to do it and that sort of thing. But I remember that was the first. It was like,
I remember it.
Intellectual.
I remember it. It was interesting because I don't know how it came up. I don't know what it was that made us mention Oliver Stone. I can't really remember.
I think I was just watching it at the time.
Okay,
mentioned something.
And I actually hadn't seen it, but I'd read the book. And I still actually haven't watched it. But it is interesting to meet someone like that, who it might be just one thing, but it's kind of a heavy subject.
It's a value though, isn't it? It's one of the things of like, well, you're interested in staring at and studying human nature, I would say, and then kind of the stuff maybe that isn't mainstream and the stuff we haven't been told about, because that's kind of his approach, isn't it? In that docuseries of like, this is what I think, or what, this is the evidence I've come across, and this is what I think actually happened in American history, versus the gung-ho sort of, morally superior American.
Well, history. We've seen his ideas of what happened, JFK thing, and it's absurd. But it's very it's a very entertaining film, and
it's his approach.
It's his. That's what I was going to say. It's like one thing, you can take it as a statement of fact, and it's not, because it's his film, and he co-wrote it with obviously another writer, but he directed, and that's his vision. And when it comes to obviously that's like more of a work of art. It's historical art, obviously, but it's art. But when he's writing about the untold history of the United States. That's the name of the book and the documentary. It's interesting because he's talking confidently, but about what his idea is and how he's.
It's a bit more anti-American.
It is, yeah.
Sort of like, it's a bit more.
And he has interviewed Putin as well, so it's just some interesting. He's lining up some interesting jokes.
So I find that interesting. It's like, this, because that was an interesting concept to come across of like, well, history isn't necessarily fact. It's just that's the evidence we have and these interpretations of the facts and all that kind of. That was an interesting idea, and that's one of his. This is the evidence I found. This is my interpretation of it, and this is because we want. Obviously, humans are drawn to stories. We want everything to be a story, and that touches every part of our life, whether we realize it or not. It's all a story. And that history is the best example of that. This is the story. This is the thread through the last 60 years, which, I mean, in no way is it that tidy and neat. Of course, it can't be.
Well, you ask,
like that.
We love it, but like if you ask just an example of someone in World War I in the trenches, and they're turning this way, another person's turning this way, looking at what's happening here and here, that's a different level of history altogether. So it's like you said, it's like there has to be an idea, like a thread that leads us through the big events,
just for us to comprehend.
Of course, because we can't take it all in. But that's the whole thing, is what you mentioned about educating ourselves and like wanting to learn the different ideas that other people have. Like Oliver Stone has lived through. Oliver Stone was like he was an army dude, doesn't he? He was in the army, so he's seen all those things as well. So he's seen stuff from the inside. So he's a fascinating character. But again, it's one of those things where he is very much a trailblazer as someone who presented facts the way he saw facts, and it's not.
Well, you can imagine his view on the Ukraine situation now will be very different from someone else's.
I'd be worried about asking him about it.
I respect you, but so please don't answer the question.
Oliver, just remember who you're talking to. I'm a snowflake, remember. I wanted to ask you this. This is something I haven't asked before, and I haven't asked anyone on the podcast before, but it's a nice little question. What is an ideal day for you?
Ideal day?
Yeah.
Christ.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
An ideal day. As in like run-of-the-mill day, or something like a special day?
Well,
just like...
I think it can be just
different. Because I mean, an ideal day, I'm going to take my daily thing, like what I would normally do. Obviously, I'd wake up quite early, like 5:30.
But take workout, though. Because you don't want to go to work on your ideal day.
Well, sometimes.
No, do you?
I like the grind, man.
But so forget about the grind.
Like a day off.
Take it, Jesus.
Well, I'd be in Poland. It's difficult. It's difficult because where am I? You're in
Ireland.
A question.
It's as vague.
Are we lockdown day?
No, we're in present day.
As you can see, I've overthought my days. So I have an ideal work question. I have an ideal holiday day. If we're in Poland,
holiday day in Ireland.
In Ireland, that's not a holiday for me.
Why do you have to be?
You mean a day off in Ireland?
See, this is what happens.
This is exactly
a perfect example of what happens.
It's such a general question.
It really is.
Do you want
me
to tell you
mine? Do you want to tell me mine?
Go on.
All right, get up nice and early, right?
Yeah.
Watch film. Short enough film. I don't want a 3-hour film in the morning. I wouldn't be able to get into it. Yeah. I go in, do a bit of CrossFit, do my jiu-jitsu, so I'm spent then. Like, physically, I'm done with like when I come home, right? Obviously, have my shower and all that. Have a nice dinner, just my usual dinner. I have my same dinner every day. Have my dinner. I get back in. I watch a film. I read for a couple of hours. Then I go on YouTube for a couple of hours because I watch nonsense on YouTube. But it switches everything off. I lie on bed for the last hour of YouTube. I watch that. I turn on music for half an hour and I go to sleep. That's it.
Okay,
that's a beautiful day for me. But that's what I mean about.
I mean, today's a pretty good day. Yeah. So I get up 5, hit the bike.
Mm-hmm.
Then my boy gets up. I have my coffee. He has his milk, and we sit and watch. I think this morning was Kung Fu Panda, and then it's some Gecko YouTube thing. But it doesn't matter because I'm sitting with my boy, and he's nestled in and all that sort of stuff. Then we need to get him ready for crash.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go off and get him ready for crash. But it'd probably be a more ideal day if he's hanging around. It's sunny.
Complicating his day.
It's sunny. Going outside and playing, like seeing them play, seeing the kids play, that's part of an ideal day. And just out on the street and the neighbor kids come over and all that sort of stuff. And it's nice to go over and see the neighbors. I suppose an ideal day is one where it's out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
I suppose. So it's kind of unusual.
Not for me, but I understand the
But then my grind day, I kind of like throwing in a bit of work.
Well,
Not
this
a
is-
9 hour.
let me
but
add
like a
this.
6 hour.
Let me add this to it. You talked about Stoicism. I pronounced it wrong again, but I'm very bad at Did I get it?
No, it's Stoicism.
Stoicism.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. People know what I'm talking about. And you talk about like people have to, have some suffering and some struggle in life.
Yeah, that's kind of
Do
a Stoic
they?
approach.
Do they though? Like, 'cause
Yeah.
why do you think
Why
they do?
is the challenging part?
Yeah,
Because it's why is life suffering?
I asked you about an ideal day, and you were going to bring up work, like.
Yeah,
Do you know that's what I'm talking about?
But then I'm making money for my family.
I understand,
That's a big
but this
part
is
of
just one day. Like, they're not going to starve. This is just.
I'm not good at chilling.
No,
that's
but I
another
don't think
part
you
of it.
do chill though, because
No,
you've got.
no, I'm not. Because I'm not good at it. I don't know how to. I get antsy, and I know that's unhealthy. But I like a bit of work in a day. So like on a Sunday, I'll do 12 till 6. That's grand. Because I get what I want to do in the morning done. Get to hang around with the kids a little bit, do the big shop, and then I earn money as well.
Okay.
Because what bothers me is when I'm off, is there's a couple of hours there where the kids are asleep and there's nothing to do. There's not enough time to do anything, but there's enough time to sit, and that's. It's that stuff I get uncomfortable. So I'm like, right, can we go and do something then?
But you're somebody who likes to learn things and take things in. Can you not sit and read a book?
I've done all that in the morning.
You've done that in the morning.
So I've kind of overdone it.
All right, okay.
So because I do that every day, so I'm kind of like.
You've done your bit, like.
So and I know it's unhealthy, but it's part of the type A personality.
Well, if you've done a bit in the morning, it's all right. I mean, if you're not all day, if you're not sitting down and like, even if it's just have a read or whatever, that's.
An ideal day is spending it with the kids and seeing them happy,
Yeah.
seeing them being stimulated by things and playing with other kids and doing stuff. It bothers me when they're just sat, and if they're watching TV for too long or something, I want them out doing things and creating and doing that. So I suppose that's probably an ideal day.
I mean, you've given us 14 ideal days. You've given it 2 weeks of ideal.
I don't have bad days.
Okay, well, look at you. Don't flaunt it around here, all right? No, but we were talking about this episode. We're trying to get it together for a while, and you were away and stuff like that. And I wanted to have like something that was fun, informative, and
I ruined it.
Thing. No. Geez. Yeah, you were the bad guest.
I sucked the fun out of it. That's my MO.
No, it's my problem for picking you as the guest for this episode.
No, for such a general question.
Yeah, but this is kind of in the talk. We were thinking like, what's this going to be? And I wasn't overthinking it. Like I told you a couple of other things in my head, and you had other stuff on. But like, did you enjoy the experience of it? Like, did you enjoy the chat? Like, because I didn't want it to be like stressful for either of us. Like, that wasn't the point,
Yeah, I mean, you can move into that territory of kind of you're right and I'm wrong, but I don't think. And probably because we're spent from jiu-jitsu, that helps. Yeah. Because all is right with the world now. That's how I feel after a good jiu-jitsu session. It's like, everything's fine.
I think you're right. Like it could be depending on the day if one of us got jiu-jitsu and one didn't, but it does make a difference. But I also think, like you said earlier on with one of the answers, it's not. We don't continue it. We don't carry it on, and it goes to somewhere else.
I think we know it doesn't matter.
Yeah. That's
like our political views don't, because we're not politicians. We're never going to be in a position to have that sort of influence over things or change it. I mean, we're not. We
don't know yet. You're not. We'll see.
Not in Ireland. No,
not Ireland.
I don't think the accent would help.
You'd be surprised. There's probably some.
Well, it's not a very small fringe group.
Oh, there's bound to be a fringe group. There's a fringe group for everything.
English sort of accent.
I don't know, like people.
I thought there was sort of a visceral kind of. When
you hear the accents, just throw up in my mouth.
Oh, the British.
The British are coming. No, like I said, I don't. But no, I really appreciate you coming on. It was really great to have this chat and to be between two episodes where I got to like relax a little bit and just have a chat with you and kind of go through some of the stuff. I also want to thank, like I always do, John for his tech skills. Got the last episode out in time.
I missed John.
I do miss John. He was actually he taught the class on Saturday because everybody was gone, but there was only a couple in there with like, he smashed a couple of young lads. I want to thank my mum and dad, my granddad, Jern Calvin, as always. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you would. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Spotify, Apple Anchor, Google Podcasts, etc. Sound more excited when I do that. But everybody, yeah, thanks very much for watching and listening and all the other stuff. We wanted to kind of shoot it the other way so we'd have all the posters and stuff, but it was literally too much surfaces and stuff. Yeah, it was kind of, but it's great. Do you know what is great about? Now I know that I can, if I wanted someone to come in, that it's possible.
You can make it happen.
We'll figure out like the sound thing, make it a bit better. Maybe get 2 mics in. The problem is this is technical nonsense, but there's only 2 USB connections, and I need one for the camera.
You'd need a bus, wouldn't you?
Is there another one?
Yeah, you can get like a little extension. You know the way you can in a normal plug.
Oh, can you?
You have a little train of them. You can
See,
do
if I
that.
get that. If I could get that, and because then I've got to have the 2 mics and just say one here and one here. But anyway, I'm going to play us out with my little song that has become the anthem. Not quite an anthem, but
like Hey Jude.
Kind of like Hey Jude. Very similar enough. You ready to turn it off? Yeah. I'll tell you when. Thanks everyone. It's the end down the bottom right.
It's not this one, no?
No,
this one?
Yeah, the end down there.
Jesus.
And for all. Thanks everyone.